Have you ever noticed how two people can walk through the same storm, yet arrive in completely different places? One emerges stronger, clearer, almost sharpened by the wind. The other walks away convinced that life is unfair. Pause for a moment and consider this. Why do some individuals seem to find opportunity in circumstances that paralyze everyone else? Why do certain people rise precisely when conditions worsen? And more importantly, what do they see that most people never notice? Because make no mistake, opportunity is rarely obvious. It disguises itself as inconvenience, as delay, as rejection, as uncertainty. Sometimes it even looks like failure. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid problems. The rare few learn how to use them, and that single shift changes everything. This audiobook is not about pretending problems do not exist. It is about training your perception so thoroughly that difficulty becomes raw material. Material you can shape, material you can leverage, material that quietly moves you ahead while others remain stuck asking, "Why is this happening to me?" Here is a truth that may unsettle you at first. Your life is not shaped primarily by the events you experience. It is shaped by what you notice inside those events. Some see obstacles, others see entry points. Some see endings, others see redirection. Before this audiobook ends, you will understand a mental framework used by high performers across industries, entrepreneurs, investors, elite athletes, innovators, though few ever describe it plainly. It is the ability to convert friction into advantage. And once you learn it, you cannot unsee it. But first, a warning. This way of thinking requires responsibility. Because the moment you realize opportunity is everywhere, excuses lose their power. Let that land. Now imagine waking up tomorrow with a mind that automatically scans for leverage instead of limitation. Imagine entering difficult situations with quiet confidence because you know something others don't. Every disruption carries hidden optionality. Yes, optionality. We will unpack that idea later, because it may become one of the most valuable mental models you ever adopt. By the time you finish listening, you will know how to retrain your brain to detect opportunity, why most people are neurologically wired to miss it, how to respond to setbacks in ways that create momentum, how to structure your environment so solutions become inevitable, and how to build what I call a solution identity, not temporary motivation, identity. If this kind of thinking resonates with you, take a second now to like this video and subscribe, not as a favor to the channel, but as a signal to yourself that you are no longer a passive observer of your circumstances. You are becoming an architect. Now take a slow breath. Because everything begins with a realization most people encounter far too late. Problems are not the enemy. Untrained perception is. Chapter 1. The hidden cost of problem-oriented thinking. Most people believe they are thinking. In reality, they are reacting. There is a difference. And that difference quietly determines the trajectory of entire lives. Problem-oriented thinking is not dramatic. It rarely announces itself. Instead, it whispers questions like, "Why does this always happen to me? Why is this so difficult? Who is to blame?" These questions feel natural, but they are neurological traps. Your brain is a prediction machine. Whatever you repeatedly ask, it learns to answer. Ask problem-focused questions, and your brain becomes an expert in limitation. Ask solution-focused questions, and suddenly your mind begins searching territory it previously ignored. Consider this. Two employees are laid off the same morning. One spends months replaying the injustice. The other asks a dangerous question. What does this free me to pursue? Same event. Different cognitive doorway. One leads backward, the other forward. Here is something few people realize. The brain has a built-in negativity bias. From an evolutionary standpoint, noticing threats kept humans alive. But in modern life, that same wiring can keep you small. Imagine walking into a room with 10 open doors and one locked door. A problem-oriented mind fixates on the locked one. A solution-oriented mind quietly walks through the open 9. Now suppose you begin treating every irritation as instruction instead of obstruction. What might change? Let's ground this with a snapshot. Case snapshot. Elena. Elena worked in a company that suddenly automated half its processes. Her role shrank overnight. Many coworkers panicked. Elena did something subtle but decisive. She studied the new systems. Within 6 months, she positioned herself as the person who understood the technology better than anyone else. Within a year, she was leading the transition team. The disruption that threatened her income accelerated her career. Pause here. Most people want certainty, but certainty rarely creates growth. Pressure does. Here is a framework you can begin using immediately. The Solution Shift Framework. When a problem appears, train yourself to ask, 1. What might this make possible? 2. What skill is this forcing me to develop? 3. Where is the leverage hidden? 4. How would a highly resourceful person respond? 5. Will this matter in 5 years? These questions interrupt emotional spirals. They move you from reaction to authorship. Imagine your car breaks down on the way to an important meeting. Problem thinking says, this day is ruined. Solution thinking asks, what can be done in the next 5 minutes? Call a ride. Move the meeting. Turn travel time into preparation. Momentum preserved. Notice something important. Solution thinkers are not calmer because life is easier. Life becomes easier because they remain operational under pressure. Here is the open loop I want you to carry forward. Later, you will learn the 2-minute cognitive reset elite performers use when emotions spike, a tool that can prevent a single bad moment from hijacking an entire week. But for now, understand this. Your brain is always answering the questions you pose. Choose better questions, and you quietly choose a better life. Where attention goes, possibility grows. Chapter 2. Opportunity is rarely obvious. Opportunity almost never looks impressive at first glance. In fact, it often looks inconvenient, or small, or poorly timed. That is why most people step over it. Imagine a narrow bridge appearing during a storm. It doesn't look grand. It looks fragile. Yet it may be the only path forward. Consider how many successful ventures began as responses to frustration rather than flashes of brilliance. A delayed flight leads someone to build better travel software. A communication breakdown inspires a new platform. A personal financial mistake sparks a career in advisory services. Problems are frequently prototypes. Now suppose you trained yourself to treat irritation as data. What patterns might reveal themselves? Let's explore a scenario. Imagine you notice your colleagues constantly struggling with presentations. Slides are cluttered, messages unclear, meetings drag. A problem, yes, but also a signal. Suppose you master presentation design. Soon people begin asking for help. Then referrals follow. Before long, a skill born from observation becomes a revenue stream. Opportunity rarely announces itself. It accumulates quietly around repeated friction. Here is a question worth remembering. What do people complain about that I could learn to solve? Complaints map unmet demand. Marcus drove for a delivery company and grew frustrated with inefficient routing. Instead of venting, he studied logistics software at night. Years later, he launched a routing consultancy that helped small fleets cut fuel costs dramatically. The annoyance others tolerated became his doorway. Let that sink in. Most people want opportunity to arrive polished, but it usually arrives disguised as effort. Here is a practical detection checklist. When something goes wrong, scan for inefficiency, repeated confusion, delays, skill gaps, peer experiences. Each one is a market whispering. Imagine missing out on something today that you will later recognize was pivotal. It happens more often than people admit. This is why awareness is a competitive advantage. Now breathe for a moment, because what I'm about to say challenges conventional comfort. You do not need a perfect situation. You need trained perception. Soon we will explore the cognitive habit that allows certain individuals to spot asymmetric opportunities, situations where the upside vastly outweighs the downside. Once you understand that model, risk itself begins to look different. For now, remember, opportunity favors the observant, not merely the intelligent. What frustrates most people often funds the perceptive. Chapter 3. Identity. Before strategy. Before tactics work. Before plans succeed. Before opportunities multiply, something quieter must shift first. Identity. Because whether you realize it or not, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-concept. Pause and examine this carefully. If deep down you see yourself as someone life happens to, you will unconsciously avoid responsibility. If you see yourself as adaptable, you begin responding differently before you even notice it. And that difference compounds faster than effort alone ever could. Here is a question worth sitting with. Who are you when things don't go as planned? Not who you want to be. Not who you are when conditions cooperate. Who are you when friction enters the room? Because that version of you is the one building your future. Consider this. 2 entrepreneurs launch businesses in the same year. Both encounter supply issues, unexpected costs, and slow traction. One interprets resistance as evidence they are not cut out for it. The other interprets resistance as tuition, the price of becoming competent. Same environment, different identity, different destiny. Daniel applied for over 30 roles after graduating. Rejections accumulated quickly. At first, each email felt personal. Then something subtle changed. He stopped asking, "Why don't they want me?" and began asking, "Who must I become so companies compete for me?" Within months, he upgraded his technical skills, refined his communication, built a visible project portfolio, and began reaching out directly instead of waiting passively. Offers followed, not because the market suddenly softened, but because his identity hardened. Let that land. Most people attempt to change results without changing self-definition, but behavior flows from identity, with remarkable consistency. Now imagine waking tomorrow with one quiet internal decision. I am someone who converts difficulty into direction. Notice how differently you would walk into uncertainty. Here is a framework you can begin applying today. The identity installation process. When facing a challenge, ask, 1. What do a highly resourceful person do here? 2. What version of me handles this with composure? 3. What capability is this situation inviting me to build? 4. If this were training, what is it preparing me for? What identity choice moves my future forward? Do not underestimate this practice. Repeated identity-based decisions restructure your behavioral baseline. Suppose a project collapses unexpectedly. A fragile identity says, "I knew this would happen." A resilient identity asks, "What is still usable?" Always remember, your brain seeks consistency with who you believe you are. Change that belief, and execution follows with far less internal resistance. Now here is something most people never hear. Identity is not discovered. It is constructed deliberately. Soon you will learn the environmental trigger that silently reinforces powerful identities without requiring constant motivation. Once installed, it reduces the energy required to act. But for now, understand this. When identity upgrades, strategy stops feeling forced. Do not wait to feel capable. Decide to become the person who adapts. Chapter 4. Turn your skills into leverage. Effort alone rarely creates freedom. Leverage does. And one of the most overlooked forms of leverage is skill. Not talent, skill. Because talent is unevenly distributed, skill is trainable. Imagine 2 individuals earning similar incomes. One spends spare time consuming content. The other spends spare time upgrading capability. 5 years later, their financial trajectories no longer resemble each other. Skill quietly widens optionality. Now consider this question. Which of your current frustrations is pointing toward a skill worth mastering? Pay attention, because irritation often reveals opportunity. Suppose you constantly struggle to explain ideas clearly during meetings. Instead of accepting this limitation, imagine studying structured communication. Soon you become the person people rely on to clarify complexity. Visibility increases. Influence expands. Income often follows clarity. Let's ground this. Case snapshot. Priya noticed her team avoided data dashboards because they looked intimidating. Rather than complain, she learned data visualization. Within a year, executives requested her reports directly because she made information digestible. Her role evolved, not through luck, but through targeted leverage. Remember this: markets reward those who reduce friction. Here is a simple but powerful checklist. Skill to leverage filter. Ask yourself, does this skill solve an expensive problem? Does it save people time? Does it help others earn, decide, or grow? Is demand increasing? Can it scale beyond my hours? If the answer is yes to several, pay attention. You may be looking at leverage. Now imagine learning a skill that continues producing value long after the initial effort. That is the difference between motion and multiplication. Pause briefly, because here is a reframing many resist at first. You are not paid primarily for effort. You are paid for usefulness. Increase usefulness, and compensation often recalibrates naturally. Soon we will explore how certain skills create asymmetric career acceleration, where small capability upgrades unlock disproportionate opportunity. But for now, begin noticing where competence could quietly reposition you. Do not wait for permission. Markets rarely announce openings. They reward preparation. Skills turn pressure into possibility. Chapter 5. The Economics of Solution Thinkers. There is an invisible economic law operating in every environment. Value flows toward problem solvers, not toward observers, not toward critics, toward solvers. Walk into any organization and notice who becomes indispensable. It is rarely the loudest voice. It is the person who enters confusion and leaves clarity behind. Now pause and consider, when difficulty appears, are you known for escalation or resolution? Reputation compounds faster than most people realize. Imagine a workplace where unexpected issues surface daily. One employee says, "This isn't my responsibility." Another says, "Let me see what can be done." Months pass. Leadership begins trusting the second person with larger decisions, not because they demanded authority, but because they demonstrated reliability under uncertainty. Let's ground this idea. During a product launch, a supply partner failed without warning, while others debated fault. Omar began mapping alternatives. Within hours, he presented 3 workable options. The launch survived. Months later, he was promoted into strategic operations. Notice something critical. He did not wait for certainty before acting. Solution thinkers move while others deliberate endlessly. Here is a practical operating rule: the 3-level response model. When problems appear, choose your altitude. Level 1. React emotionally. React emotionally both to the noir. Level 2. Analyze intellectual. Level 3. Respond constructively. Train yourself to reach level 3 faster. Speed of constructive response often separates those who stagnate from those who ascend. Now imagine encountering a sudden financial setback. Reaction says, "Why me?" Construction asks, "What adjustments protect momentum?" One preserves agency. The other surrenders it. Let that settle. Because what I'm about to say is uncomfortable, but liberating. Opportunity is biased toward those who remain operational under stress. Not fearless. Operational. Soon we will examine the mental recalibration technique high performers use to prevent emotional flooding from impairing decision quality. Once learned, it becomes difficult for chaos to hijack your trajectory. For now, remember this: employers reward it. Markets reward it. Relationships trust it. Solution orientation is not personality. It is trained behavior, and behaviors compound into reputation. Those who solve more, rise more. Chapter 6. Learn the rules, then see beyond them. Every environment operates on rules. Some are written, most are invisible, and the people who advance fastest are rarely the ones who rebel blindly. They are the ones who first understand the game deeply. Pause and reflect on this. You cannot leverage what you do not recognize. Imagine playing a strategic board game without understanding how scoring works. Effort would not save you. Movement alone is not progress. Now consider how many adults operate financially, professionally, even socially, without ever studying the mechanics shaping their outcomes. Here is a quiet truth. Average performers follow instructions. High performers study incentives, because incentives reveal behavior. Suppose you enter a company and notice promotions consistently go to those who lead revenue-generating initiatives rather than internal maintenance projects. That is not favoritism. That is incentive alignment. Once you see it, you can position accordingly. Let's ground this idea. Victor worked tirelessly managing internal workflows, reliable, efficient, invisible. After observing leadership patterns, he shifted toward projects directly tied to growth metrics. Within a year, his exposure multiplied. 2 years later, he moved into senior leadership. His effort did not suddenly increase. His direction did. Let that settle. Many people exhaust themselves climbing ladders that were never connected to meaningful ceilings. Now imagine learning to ask one powerful question whenever entering a system. What does this environment actually reward? Not what it claims to reward. Not what sounds admirable. What it measurably advances. Here is a framework worth remembering. The rules recognition filter. When evaluating any environment, scan for where money flows, where attention concentrates, what behaviors accelerate careers, which problems leadership prioritizes, what outcomes trigger trust. Patterns rarely lie. Once you understand the rules, something remarkable happens. You stop personalizing friction. You begin interpreting it strategically. Now breathe for a moment, because here is where many people misunderstand this principle. Seeing the rules does not mean becoming cynical. It means becoming intelligent in your navigation. Soon, we will explore calculated rule bending, the moment when mastery allows you to create unconventional advantage without reckless risk. But never skip the first step. Understand the structure before attempting innovation. Those who see the game clearly move with quiet precision. Chapter 7. Escape the reaction loop. Most lives are not directed. They are triggered. Email arrives. Reaction. Criticism appears. Reaction. Plans shift. Reaction. Days become chains of responses rather than expressions of intention. But solution thinkers interrupt this loop. Let me ask you something quietly confronting. How much of your day is chosen, and how much is merely answered? Imagine waking up already behind emotionally because yesterday did not unfold as expected. Now every inconvenience feels heavier than it truly is. This is cognitive spillover, when unresolved emotion contaminates fresh decisions. High performers train against this, not because they feel less, but because they recover faster. Consider this scenario. Suppose a client rejects a proposal you invested weeks preparing. Reaction says, "All that effort wasted." Response asks, "What feedback sharpens the next version?" Momentum preserved. During a major presentation, Lena's slides malfunctioned. For a brief second, panic knocked. Instead of apologizing repeatedly, she closed the laptop and spoke directly. The conversation became more engaging than the presentation would have been. Afterward, a senior executive remarked on her composure. The glitch became a demonstration of leadership presence. Pause here. Composure is not the absence of stress. It is trained recovery speed. Here is the technique I hinted at earlier, one used quietly across high-stakes professions. The 2-minute cognitive reset. When emotion spikes, 1. Stop physical movement briefly. 2. Take 5 slow breaths. 3. Name the emotion internally. Frustration, fear, anger. Physiaks. What outcome matters most in the next 10 minutes? 5. Act toward that outcome, not toward the emotion. This interrupts neurological flooding, and interruption restores agency. Now imagine mastering this so thoroughly that setbacks no longer derail entire days. Soon, you will discover the environmental factor that makes this reset almost automatic, reducing reliance on willpower. For now, remember, you cannot control every event, but you can dramatically reduce how long it controls you. Power is not avoiding disruption, it is shortening recovery. Chapter 8. Environment. The silent advantage. Willpower is overrated. Environment is decisive. Look carefully at any sustained transformation, and you will find structural support beneath it. Because behavior is heavily shaped by what surrounds you. Imagine trying to think expansively while immersed in chronic negativity. Possible? Yes. Exhausting? Also yes. Now imagine an environment where solution-oriented thinking is normal. Growth accelerates with less friction. Let me ask you something worth auditing. Does your current environment expand your perception or compress it? Consider 2 professionals with equal talent. One spends time among builders, people discussing ideas, improvements, possibilities. The other remains among habitual complainers. 5 years pass. Their thinking no longer resembles each other. Exposure compounds. Let's ground this. Raphael felt stagnant despite working hard. Eventually, he joined a small professional forum where members dissected challenges constructively rather than venting. Within months, his language changed. Within a year, his ambitions expanded. Soon after, his career followed. Nothing mystical occurred, only environmental recalibration. Now pause, because here is something many underestimate. Your brain normalizes whatever it encounters repeatedly. If limitation is normalized, vision shrinks quietly. Here is a simple structural audit. The Environment Upgrade Checklist. Evaluate your proximity to people who discuss solutions, information that expands thinking, conversations about building rather than blaming, individuals slightly ahead of your current level, spaces that encourage focus. You do not need a dramatic life overhaul. Even modest environmental upgrades create directional drift. Soon, we will examine how small intelligent decisions repeated create trajectories that appear extraordinary from the outside. But remember this now, environment is not about status. It is about cognitive nutrition. Choose carefully what feeds your mind. Place yourself where solutions feel normal. Chapter 9. The compounding effect of intelligent decisions. Most breakthroughs are invisible while they are forming, because compounding is subtle until it isn't. People often search for dramatic turning points. Yet lives usually pivot through accumulated micro-decisions. Imagine choosing learning over distraction for just 1 hour each day. Unremarkable tonight, transformative over years. Now consider the opposite. Small avoidances repeated consistently. Direction is rarely determined by single choices. It is shaped by patterns. Here is a question worth carrying forward. Are your daily decisions aligned with the future you quietly expect? Let's ground this idea. Noah committed to studying market trends for 30 minutes every morning before work. At first, nothing changed. Months later, she began recognizing opportunities others overlooked. Eventually, she made a small investment that grew steadily. Her friends called her lucky. They never saw the mornings. Let that sink in. Luck is often disciplined perception viewed from the outside. Now imagine approaching decisions through a simple lens. The trajectory test. Before acting, ask, does this move me slightly forward or slightly backward? Would repeating this decision daily help or harm me? Am I choosing relief or growth? What would my future self thank me for? These questions seem small, but small guidance prevents large drift. Soon, we will assemble everything you've learned into a repeatable operating system, one that reduces decision fatigue while increasing directional clarity. For now, understand this. Success rarely arrives loudly. It accumulates quietly, then reveals itself suddenly. Tiny intelligent choices create disproportionate futures. Chapter 10. The Solution Operating System. By now, something inside you may already feel different. Not louder, clearer. Because once perception upgrades, you cannot fully return to unconscious living. Now it is time to integrate everything into a structure you can rely on, especially when life becomes unpredictable. Think of this as your internal navigation system. Not rigid, reliable. The daily solution practice. Each morning ask, where can I create value today? This primes your brain toward contribution rather than complaint. Each evening, reflect briefly. What problem did I handle well? Where did I react instead of respond? What did today attempt to teach me? Awareness compounds. The weekly calibration. Once a week, examine which challenges repeated, which skills would reduce future friction, where did opportunity appear disguised as inconvenience. Patterns reveal direction. The long-term orientation. Train yourself to view discomfort as developmental. When something stretches you, consider the possibility that life is enlarging your capacity. Now imagine living this way long enough that resilience becomes your default setting, not forced. Natural. Here is something vital to remember. You do not need perfect control to build a powerful life. You need consistent orientation. And that orientation is simple. Toward solutions, toward growth, toward possibility. Before we close, hold this open loop gently. Years from now, you may look back and realize that the moment your thinking shifted, your trajectory quietly shifted with it. Not overnight, but unmistakably. A solution mindset is not a tactic. It is a life direction. There will always be problems. That is not pessimism. That is reality. But now you understand something many never fully grasp. Problems are not stop signs. They are decision points. Moments asking who you are becoming. Imagine moving through life no longer intimidated by difficulty, because you know where to look when friction appears. You look for leverage. You look for instruction. You look for possibility. And over time, people begin noticing something different about you. Calm where others panic. Constructive where others stall. Forward-moving where others freeze. Not because your life is easier, but because your perception is trained. Carry this final thought with you. You do not control every circumstance, but you dramatically influence what each circumstance becomes. If this audiobook expanded your thinking, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Not just to support the channel, but to keep surrounding your mind with ideas that move you forward. And wherever life challenges you next, remember this simple directive. Focus on solutions, and situations begin to focus in your favor.